Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. And today we've got best-selling author of many books, Mr. Damion Lupo. He is on a mission to free 1 million people from financial bondage, and he hosts the Financial Underdogs podcast, which rips conventional wisdom apart for the Main Street investor looking for truth about money and investing. Not only has he started 50 plus companies, he's even founded his own martial art, Yokido, and he developed the ultimate investor retirement tool called the EQRP, which is where I found out about you first, Damion. His strategy gives individuals total control of their retirement money to invest in real assets like real estate, gold, and crypto. Damion, pleasure to have you on. How are you today?
Good. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So let's go ahead and start where we normally start. Usually when we talk with pure real estate investors, we like to find out, how they got their spark to invest in real estate. But obviously this is a little bit of a different show because you may be investing in real estate, but I think your specialty is more about helping out with these retirement investing tools for the common man. And so what I'd like to do is explore where that passion came from and how you discovered all this in the beginning.
Y'all probably going to laugh at this, but I think the thing that sparked me back in the late 90s was Donald Trump. And it's because I read a bunch of his books and I was selling insurance and I said, you know what, there's not enough money in insurance. Like unless you own Geico, Warren Buffett, you're not going to make that much money. And I say that looking at the model of the guy that was in front of me that was making $1 million a year. And I said, that's not enough. So I was selling my auto policies and all this stuff. And I read Donald's books and I read a couple other books and saw a seminar. It was like an infomercial, go to this seminar. And I was like, amazing. So I flew to Orlando and I just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So I got to watch Robert Kiyosaki live, got all excited, bought every tape that every speaker had. So I had to buy a new suitcase, brought the tapes home. And I did something really weird. I actually listened to all the tapes and burned them out. Most people buy that stuff and they think I'm going to be wealthy because I have the tapes. And that doesn't do anything except drain your checkbook. Yeah. So the spark was I wanted to create wealth, and $1 million was not what I was looking for. I didn't want to spend 20 years to build something that was producing $1 million. Not that $1 million a year is bad. It's just when you're 22, your ego is really big, and you're like, I need to make $1 billion a year. So I was thinking I was Michael Milken or something, and so I went off and did the real estate stuff and started buying houses, and that's how we started.
That's incredible. So, we went over a lot of things here. And when you discovered this tool, or when you discovered how investing with a retirement account works, can you give us the story about how you started your company and how you started to put together this EQRP?
It started right after the crash. So in the crash, I had a bunch of real estate lost, not a lot, but a ton. And when I say a ton, I'm talking, it was a $25 million swing. So I went from 20 million to negative 5 million in 12 months. And had to start over and was living in my car. It was a pretty bad time. And so on the other side of that, I was just wandering a little bit. I thought it was like in the Australian outback doing a walkabout like Crocodile Dundee. And if anybody's listening and they're 20, they're like, who is Crocodile Dundee?
Yeah,
anyways,
pretty much.
Like, okay, so that was the thing back when we were kids. And so I was looking around trying to figure out what I was going to do. And I was selling some gold and silver because one of my companies is a precious metals dealer. And so somebody came to me and said, I want to use my retirement account to buy some silver. And I thought, that's cool. You know what? I bet you I could sell some more silver to people that had retirement accounts. The problem is most retirement accounts are not built to be able to buy precious metals. So I started digging in, and this is about 11, 12 years ago. I started digging into the tax code and realized that what people needed didn't exist. There were some things that gave people partial control, but not total control. And so that's where the EQRP was born, where I said, there's a niche in a problem that's not being solved. I want to give people actual control and actual options. So I built it. That's what entrepreneurs do. We can't help it. Like that's what we find a problem, we go solve it.
That's right. It says here too, that you started 50 plus companies. And I imagine that the gold and silver trade business is one of them. And the EQRP is obviously another. Where did this passion from you come from to start businesses? Is this something that you were born with, or can you think of the first time that you had your first enterprise startup?
I was told no a lot. No, you can't do that. No, we don't have any money. No, money doesn't grow on trees. No. And it gets irritating as a kid. You're just like, how do I fix this? Some people just get beaten down and they cower in the corner and they say, well, I guess no is the answer. I did not. I pushed back and I said, I'm going to fix this. So when I was 11, I hired my parents to drive me around to buy and sell Nintendo games. And that was one of my first businesses. And so it was really just the pushback from my folks, especially my dad. I think my mom would have liked to said yes, but they didn't have any money. So I ended up doing it. I don't think that you can help it when you're an entrepreneur. There's some part of our chromosome structure that is like entrepreneurial. And I don't know which one it is. I don't know if it's the A, B, M, G, whatever those little pieces of our DNA are, but there is something where you're entrepreneurially wired, and it had to happen. It wasn't really a choice. I feel like I was meant to be that way, and that's how I started. And maybe my dad just spurred it by saying no all the time.
That's really interesting. I was going to say that the gene is the masochistic gene. That's what the gene is to be an entrepreneur.
But
Could be.
Yeah, that's so cool, Damion. Yeah, I do epigenetics for a living. So I'm fascinated by that too. And I love I love looking at the epigenetics of people who are high performers and high achievers. And so let's go back to during the recession. Not a lot of people get the opportunity to amass a $25 million portfolio, let alone lose it and then come back. And so can you talk about the mindset? I hear that there's resilience in your DNA from the beginning, but going through up and downs and those massive swings, what kind of got you through it all?
Here's the thing that I learned on the other side of it. What got me through was, I guess, just pure survival. Like, I didn't want to die, but there was a piece of me that probably thought that that was a good idea. When you're upside down $5 million and everybody hates you, and your friends from the last 25, 30 years tell you they want you to rot in hell, which happened.
Wow.
Because when all the money goes away, it's not just your money, it's other people's money.
Yep.
And when you have a crash and you've taken on other people's money and everybody loses, not everybody, there are some people that actually got it. They're like, okay, you didn't cause the recession. We wish you had done something different that hadn't lost, but there's some people that it's pretty debilitating. So the mindset, first off, the big shift for me was owning that I chose everything that happened. And so taking responsibility for it really allowed me to let go of it. Without taking responsibility, then I'm always going to be a victim. And that's where most people get stuck. It's like, it happened to me. And then what happens next? They're waiting for the thing to happen to them again. They're waiting for the next president to be better than the current one. Like, there's always this, what's next? I'm waiting. I'll see. That's what you hear people say. I'll see what happens. I'm making it happen. And that's the big mindset shift. You own it, and then you go do the work. And so on the other side of that stuff, it was really just saying, okay, who am I? And I realized I was a dick. Like, previously, I was a terrible, I would not want to meet me and hang out with me of 2005. If I ran into me, I'd run the other way. So acknowledging that and saying, okay, what do I need to do to rewire myself? Not just what I'm doing, but really, what are my values and how am I going to drive my life from those values? That was a big shift. Most people don't ever do that. They just go, okay, I need to learn a new thing. But the problem is, you're still running from the same operating system, which is your values, your virtues, and if you have a mission, maybe that's there. But the shift was figuring out what values were going to drive things, and then what mission was going to be my life that was more than just my hedonistic tendencies. I was a great consumer. That's a terrible thing. When somebody said, I need to make more money, then I can go do more stuff. And I'm like, oh, good. So like, you're a hedonist like I was. And people are like, wait, what?
Yeah,
like, I get it, but there's got to be something bigger. And the shift was, I'm doing this to free 1 million people from what I think is modern day slavery called the money system. If you don't get the money system, it's being used against you. And so that's the entire shift that happened. And now it's just an obsession.
Mm.
That is so powerful. And especially where you said, I take ownership, you never play the victim card. Was there like a precipitating event that happened like even earlier than that? Or was it during that time of the crash?
Well, so part of the crash, I had some partners that I used to work with. And one of the things that happened is I was betrayed. I watched what happened. I chose poorly the people that I brought in, and so I chose, and I watched them take certain actions. And then I got very mad. And so it was like, oh, well, it was their fault. And the money went away. And you know what? I still chose those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
That changing the outlook on that empowers me to do something different. Until we own it, we can't change anything. I mean, because you can't change a lie and you can't change the blame. Okay, I guess you can move the blame around, but it's still somebody else. So whether you're blaming Nancy Pelosi or Donald Trump or your bad business partner or whatever, okay, good. So then you've just given away all the power. And that's where most people are. They've given away their power to somebody else or something else, the weather, the politics, whoever's in charge of whatever they're thinking about. And I just shifted away from that. So there isn't anything that I can't change. And people say, how do you change a hurricane? I'm like, well, I can change how I respond to it. And that's the big shift for people when you own everything, including your response. I mean, hardcore people will say, well, hey, I got raped. Somebody jumped out of an alley and they raped me. And I go, yeah. And how did you respond to it? Because yeah, maybe you can't stop that. And are you a victim? It depends on how you respond to it. And that's always our choice.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to go deeper and deeper. As you're going through this, did you have a support system? Did you have people to talk to? Like, who are you having these conversations with? Because I can't imagine that you were doing it alone, or maybe you were having this internal dialogue and figuring and having these monumental mind shifts on your own. But I'm just kind of curious, like, what else was going in the background?
That's one of the things that everybody needs. They need to have other people to give them feedback and perspective. I spent about a year and a half with a guy doing therapy / coaching. And really, he sat there and he asked me one question. He's one of the authorities in the world on the Course in Miracles. And so he used that as the foundational work that helped me process what had happened and what to do next through it. What we ended up talking about for that year and a half was the answer to the question, what is true? And that was the basis for Reinvented Life when I wrote that in 2012. It was asking what the truth is and then going deeper into that truth over and over again. I needed help figuring it out. And really, I just needed somebody to hold the space, and a great mentor, coach, therapist holds space. And the great patient or the great person that's involved is working through it. The worst type of therapy is when you go and you vomit on a therapist and then you come back and do the same thing every week. Like, that's a terrible, but that's what most people do. Right. I went there to do the work. I was like, okay, I don't like how my first third of my life has really gone. I need to fix this. It's important to me. And so the work, it's a hard work. The hardest work you're ever going to do is the work on yourself. And it's the best investment you'll ever make. It's, it's 100 or 1,000 or a million X better than an apartment, better than gold, better than anything.
100%.
So that was the shift.
Even the greats, like I think Warren Buffett says the best investment you can make is your own knowledge or in yourself. And I think that that's 100% true. And everyone that we've talked to, people that have done incredible things, have done the work to invest in themselves. And it starts with the curiosity, and it starts with an interest and the willingness to work on yourself and the openness, right? Sophie and I have performance coaches when we were living in the California Bay Area, and they helped us unlock a whole new level of performance because we were honest with ourselves, with each other, and the relationship. Because there's those three entities whenever you have a relationship that you're working together towards something on. And I completely can confirm with you that that's been our experience as well.
And when you said like that deep work, I think it's hard for just the everyday person, like when you're kind of in the grind, you're in the rat race, unless something kind of creates a pattern interruption in your daily life that makes you like aware. Oftentimes, like, would you agree, Damion? Like we don't really come upon that ourselves unless we're forced to, right?
There's a chapter in the book. In fact, I think it's the first chapter in Reinvented Life called the trigger event. And so oftentimes things happen and it's an opportunity. They shake you, they jar you. Like for me, it was 4 federal agents showing up at my door in the desert after my world was collapsing, and, guns and badges, and scared the living crap out of me. And the crazy part is they weren't even there for me. They were there for the lady that owned the house or lived in the house before me. It was the IRS, but I thought it was for me. And I was like, oh my God, they're here for me. I'm not really sure who they is, but they have guns and badges, and this is bad. It was a wake up call. And I remember being terrified, and I dropped to my knees and I was crying and I was freaked out, and I was like, what is going on? And that's where I realized I was in this deep fear for everything. And so we have these opportunities for those moments. Maybe it's somebody's fired, maybe somebody dies. One of my friends died a couple of weeks ago, and his name is Gene Carino. He was well known in the seminar circles. He taught residential assisted living, and that was a wake up call. And this guy was larger than life. And so that was a trigger event for me. Okay, let's take a relook at what I'm doing, who I am, and this can go away. Wait, it's going to go away. So what am I going to do between now and then? Who am I going to be? And let's start that right now. So that's a constant question and a check-in, and we can use any type of event to trigger it. I think most people are on a merry-go-round, asleep at the wheel in their lives.
Right. And I think this is a perfect time for us to start to talk about at least what I've known you for, which is the EQRP. Most people may already know what this is or have an idea, but can you give a real high level top-down view of what the EQRP is and how it can help the everyday person, just like what we were talking about right now?
Yeah, the EQRP allows you to have control of your financial future, your retirement money. It allows you to invest in things that are not Wall Street. You can do Wall Street if you want. I mean, I think most people, Wall Street does them. I don't think that they do Wall Street, but anyways, that's another story. But the point of this, the EQRP, is it's an enhanced qualified retirement plan that gives you absolute total control of your retirement money and your assets. So you can invest in things like real estate, apartments, Bitcoin, gold, private equity, all the stuff that Wall Street doesn't want you to do because they don't get the fees. And it gives you the ability to have a life by design versus by default. And that's the big shift. This is for self-responsible people. Most people, unfortunately, are trained to be victims. They're trained to blame and justify and have excuses. So it's not the appropriate thing. The people that say it's my life, it's going to be, if it's going to be, it's up to me, like that, this is perfect, because you get to choose what you're going to invest in. You're going to be able to do it tax-free. You're going to be able to do it. You're going to be able to put a ton of money into it. Like there's all these choices and people are like, wait, why have I not heard of this? Like, why would Wall Street tell you about this? That's a terrible idea for them because they'd lose all their fees.
That's fantastic. I think that this is a fantastic tool. And something that I wanted to emphasize here is that one of the ways that I got started learning about real estate investing was tapping into my retirement funds. And so I think this is what you mean by this is one way, like a gateway for you to take control of your own destiny. And the way it did that for me, and I wanted to hear what you thought about this, and we can go from there, is that I didn't have the money to be able to invest in a property on my own. And I was a corporate worker for a very long time. And so I had access to these retirement funds that I could use. And so I tapped into it using a product like this. And I was able to invest in some real estate. And that gave me experience to be able to take to the table for me to start shifting my mindset away. But without having the access to my retirement funds or something that I had saved for a very long time, which is very often the case with many Americans. And we can talk about that too later on.
Well, it's amazing that you did that. And what most people don't realize is they're sitting on this gold mine that they can tap into with people's money, whether it's IRAs or 401ks. They're like, oh, well, I guess that's just going to be something that's there until I'm 60. Yeah. And that's it. Mm-hmm. The reality is not only can you invest that money into things like real estate, so you have some experience, but you can also take, like with an EQRP, you can take up to $50,000 out and invest it in mentors, in programs, education. And so you can do anything you want. It doesn't have to be an investment in a thing. It can be an investment in you. So you've got all this pile. So when people say, I don't have any money, I'm like, yeah, but you have a retirement account. So you do have resources. You're just not appropriately applying them yet. And they go, wait, what? Like I can do that? Again, why would anybody that's holding your assets and charging you 2 or 3% a year tell you can take the money away from them so you can invest in yourself? They want to keep you dumb.
100%. How many times have you seen the light bulb go off with potential clients or people who don't even know this product exists?
The best part, and this kind of got screwed up during COVID, when I'm in a live event, it's always funny because there'll be 50, 100, 200 people in an audience. And I'll watch people go through this process where they're like, wait a second, this seems too good to be true. So they're like, there's the skepticism, phase one. And then there's phase two, like, wait a second, you know what? I wish I'd had this 10 years ago. Like there's all of a sudden, like, I'm really pissed off at everybody that should have told me this. And then phase three is how the heck fast can I get this set up? So it's always really funny to watch everybody. I see it on Zoom too. And people are like, wait a second, what in the world? Why have I not heard of this? And I'm laughing. I'm like, well, who you been talking to? One, they don't know. And if they do know, they're not telling you.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Damion, a lot of our listeners are couples. And of course, like we all know that a root cause of a lot of conflicts and relationships are financial, lack of financial knowledge. How have you guided couples or how would you have couples start the conversation about getting a little bit more on the same page with their finances?
Well, it's interesting over the years. I've been in plenty of relationships and had this experience. I've also worked with people where the key is you have to have an open conversation about reality and be willing to answer the question, what is true? What is true about your debt? What is true about your vision? What does your life cost? What's the runway for you? If you actually want to be free, what does that cost every year? Like how much actual residual income do you need? And most people just don't want to acknowledge the truth. So I can tell you that you can find out the truth with the C's, your cash, your credit card, and your calendar. And most people are like, don't look at my credit cards. Don't look at my checking account. Don't look at my calendar, because they're embarrassed. And when couples are willing, when they actually want a life, they want to have a vision and have that life by design, it requires the truth. And the truth is rough. Like money doesn't lie and numbers don't lie. And when somebody goes, yeah, like I remember tracking every penny for a year. And at the end of the year, I was like, I just spent $200 on coffee. I was thinking, who does that? And I was like, most of America, most people that can't afford it. They're like $7 a day at Starbucks. And you add that up and you're like $7 a day, that's over $2,000. Well, $2,000. And I'm not saying I go to Starbucks or I go someplace for my $7 coffee every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I do that because I can afford it. Most people can't. I see people that do it. I'm like, you literally should be taking that $7. You should be investing it in you. You should go do a seminar for $2,000 and then buy an asset that will pay for your coffee. So it really starts with having this open conversation. And what I've seen a lot with couples is one person built up the courage to say, here's what I want. The other person's like, no. And I go, ooh, this is especially devastating when a man has a vision and the wife says, yeah, you don't need that. You don't need that boat. And I was like, you're literally crushing the spirit. And then you start to really screw up the energy between the couples, because like for men want to go create and provide. And for women, if they crush that spirit, and so I'm picking on women because I've seen this a lot in couples, you want to support, like guys, we have like, we only do two things, like we eat and you know what, and like we really will fight to the death for our partner. And we do this, we go to war, we want to go out in war, and whether it's business or on a field in Afghanistan, doesn't really matter. And so what I see with money is the most successful couples open it up and they support each other. And it might be a crazy idea for one of them, but the other one says, okay, you know what, let's go do it. So being really supportive of whatever it is, and then keep encouraging and pushing. When somebody gets stuck and they get scared, I see a lot of defense being played, and then you're playing against each other versus asking. I would say the question is, okay, how might we be able to do what it is you want to do? And instead of saying no sucks. Like that's how I broke out of and had a terrible relationship with my dad for 20 years, because he kept saying no. And I'm like, well, F you, like I'm out of here. And I went off and did it anyway. You don't want to do that in a partnership. And so if you say, how might we do this? It's really interesting, open, positive, potential question. A lot of potentiality in that question. It's a really good one. Now, I will say that you don't want to necessarily say, how do we do it, without saying, should we do this? Because you get into a lot of dang trouble. It's like when I bought my Ferrari and then had to get other ones, and like you do all these dumb things and you get arrested like that. Because I was like, well, how do I do it? All right, well, go do it. And then you blow your life up. So you want to fight, you want to ask like, should, and hey, if you want a Ferrari, go buy a Ferrari. You want a boat, get a boat. If you, whatever it is, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. That's the takeaway right there.
Damion, one thing I wanted to touch on is that when people understand your product or understand what it is that you're offering individuals, which is really their own wealth, right? You're basically opening up a whole new level of access to purchase things, or basically capital to be able to do whatever they want to do with. That's not available to them. And how do you guide couples through that process to select the right type of investment? Like I know that you're the person that's coming along with the product, but I know that the next question is, what do I do with all of this, right? Because you see people with these hundreds of thousands of dollars in their accounts, right? And you have maybe a couple dynamic, maybe it's just a single individual, but they're looking at all of this cash. And now that you're opening it up to them and they're able to use some of that right now as a retirement vehicle, but also for learning in themselves and investing in whatever they want to do, how do you direct and steer people, or how do you help people think through what type of investment to go? Because there's anything you could basically invest in with these EQRPs.
Yeah, I mean, part of this is really taking a step back and figuring out their plan. So I've got a new book coming out called The Map. It's the Millionaire Action Plan. And that book is really the mentoring and coaching that I do in a book, so people can go through the questions and the process of communicating through that and figuring it out, because you got to have, okay, like together you're building your vision, and then you're going to process, how are we going to, like, what are we going to go? People say, should I invest in this piece of real estate? I'm like, how the hell would I know if you should invest in it? I don't know what your life looks like. Like, I don't know if real estate's the right thing. And so it's asking the vision question first. Like, what do you want your life to look like? And then filling it in with the assets and things. People jump, they start buying things. I'm like, why are you buying the real estate? Well, because it's a good return. I'm like, I know, but it's like, but why? What are you trying to get it? Like, what's it for? I'm not really sure. Like, I just want more. Like, that's what they kind of come with. More is their answer.
More returns, right?
More returns, more money, more assets. I'm like, okay, well, you know what? There's never enough. So you're trading your life for that. Keep in mind, when you're going after these assets, you're going to trade time, and that time is something you can't get back. And so this is a big question. Like, what do we want? What's the outcome? What are we willing to pay the price for? And having an open conversation about it. Like, just because you can go make another $1 million doesn't mean you should trade the year that it's going to take, or the month, or whatever it is. You want to be mindful of that, because that time thing is the priceless piece that you can't get back.
Ah, well said. Well said. When you're talking through these investments, or when you're talking through, do you and offer any advice beyond your coaching, or do you help like hold people through the process? Because now that they have all these funds open to them and they've got this whole world and they've got that piece of advice that you just said, like, what's your vision, how much time and what's your risk tolerance and all of these things. Do you have anything or anyone in your group that can help walk through this, or are you developing another product to help them figure out what to do with all of that newly found capital?
Well, one of the things we do is we figure out what we're trying to accomplish with the capital. So we are going to ask those things. If somebody says, look, I need $4,000 a month, and then I can actually own my time and I can play with my grandkids and I can start this thing, this business, this charity or whatever. I go, great. Okay. So probably not buying gold as your entire asset base is the right answer. I like gold, but being appropriate with how you're allocating and saying, okay, what are these things accomplishing? Because you can have a bunch of stocks, but if it's not producing any cash flow, how are you going to produce cash flow? And so it's asking a lot of questions. It's work. People are like, wow,
Sure.
It's a lot of thinking. And I'm like, yeah, thinking is tough. And this is the process for becoming free. You got to think.
Mhm.
Handing money over to an advisor on Wall Street requires no thinking. It requires being sold and then letting go of responsibility. That's what most people do. They're like, I'm busy, I'm tired. And I get it. So this is the commitment. And again, it's just asking a lot of questions. Those are in MAP, and the conversations that I have, my team has with people. It's really asking these questions and then letting them figure it out. I always say the same thing, that you're your own guru. There's a Netflix documentary that Anthony Robbins did, that I am not your guru. When people come to me, what do I do? I'm like, I don't know. What do you think you should do? And then they're like, well, I was thinking some real estate. I'm like, okay, why? I don't have any answers. I have questions. And I know that the human being has the answers, because you're always going to have those if somebody can help you with the questions. Great mentors and coaches ask questions, and they also trust that you're going to be able to pull it out. So that's our job, is to really help open people up and take a look inside.
Yeah. One quick comment before Sophie, I know she wants to ask a question, but one quick comment on that I picked up on is that when you allow someone to tap into these types of resources, you're giving them the responsibility and the dignity of choice to choose what they do with it. And when you do that, you expand someone's mind, because you're giving them the ability to manage more money, which, as you know, Damion, when you manage more money well, more money comes. So it's this huge opportunity for people to be able to take their savings or everything they've worked really hard for and put it to work somehow. And so not a lot of people get a chance to do that. And I think that's what I really love about this product, is the mindset shift that comes along with the access that it provides, right? Instead of just, picking from the open stock market, now you can pick from anything. And now the locus of control is on you, not what the stock market does, what Wall Street does, what your advisor recommends. And I think that's what this whole mindset piece is about. So that was a long-winded comment, but I just wanted to re-summarize what I heard from you there, and hopefully that's accurate.
Yeah, and a follow up on that, one of the things that's unique, that's probably more important than anything, is the culture around the EQRP, the team, and what we're doing, this mission. There's a culture of responsibility, that there's a culture of relationship and connection. And it's fascinating to me, because sometimes people say, well, what's the difference? It's another tool. And I'm like, you'll get it. You'll get what happens when you're inside the right culture. You'll be dazzled and amazed, and you'll say, oh my gosh, this is unlike anything I've ever been around before. The way that we spend time and energy investing in our tribe, and how they're treated, the dignity and respect in us trusting them and helping guide them into their truth. And then all the things that we do when you're in a culture, it's like, if you go to Disneyland, there is a culture there, and it's been worked on and built for decades, and it's unique. You don't just create that. You don't just have like, oh look, it's a big castle, we'll call it Magic Kingdom 2 in Omaha. Like it's about the culture. So EQRP is about us helping the honey badger become truly honey badgerish. And it's about people that say, okay, I want that freedom. I want that relentless possibility. I want to be able to go out and do my life. And it's the right culture for that. A lot of places will say, well, we have similar tools. And I laugh. I'm like, you don't have the culture. You don't have the people. You don't have the mission. So it's a different world.
Yeah. And Damion, I want to jump into that a little bit more about the details of what you guys offer a little bit later on. But I'll let Sophie ask a question since she's been burning too.
Well, so because, I'm hearing like you've built 50 plus companies, you even started your own martial arts. And I want to hear more about that too, because I used to do martial arts as a kid as well. And, with all of your experience, with everything you've seen, what continues to surprise and delight you with everything you do?
I'm surprised by, I'm delighted when people say, when the bulb, I can hear the bulb. Sometimes I can see and feel the tears of, oh my God, I actually have a choice and I have a chance. What frustrates me is people that are so scared of making a mistake that they just don't take any action. They're sitting there waiting. I'm like, I'm not sure what you're waiting for. Eventually you're going to be dead. So maybe you're just waiting for your breath to stop. And there's a difference between your breath stopping and something taking your breath away. And I think people really, when they start taking action, things will take their breath away. That's what happens to me. My breath is taken away every time I see somebody go, oh my God, I am able to be free. So that's, I've had people reach out to me and say, you know what, you changed my life. My wife is no longer working because we tapped into a resource and bought assets, and now we own our life. She's with our daughter. Like when that kind of stuff happens, what do you say to that? You say, wow. And so that's why we do this. It's seeing people, and it's not just throwing something out there and saying, I hope it works out. Like it's being deeply engaged and committed to their freedom. That's what it's all about. It's about freedom. So when I have episodes on FU and I'm attacking these systems like the Federal Reserve and Wall Street, it's because they're anti-freedom. They are totally against people owning their lives because they want to control and harvest off of people's time and energy. And I have a fundamental problem with that. It's unethical.
Yeah, absolutely. So powerful what you just shared. And can you also share just what your day-to-day looks like? I mean, like morning routine even, and then also how did you have time to come up with Yokido? And can you share what that is too? Because I want to start doing it.
It's funny because my day is really figuring out how I can help and serve my team. And I work for my team. That's the way I look at my companies, and they don't work for me. I work for them. And it's figuring out how I can support them, how I can mentor them, what resources I can provide to them, how I can put them back together when they break something, something happens. And so day to day, everything is different because when you have humans, every day is different. And there's things that are scheduled. And so sometimes I have rhythms. I actually sleep at night. That's one of my rhythms. It's probably the only consistent rhythm because there's so many things going on. And part of it is I feel like there's an urgency because I'm alive. And while we're alive, we've got the life to provide some value. And when we're dead, we're not going to have that anymore. So I don't know if that makes any sense, but while I'm here, I'm doing as much as I can. And that doesn't mean that working 22 hours a day is the best idea, but what it means is that it's full on and full in whenever I'm on. And so what does my day look like? It's very intense. Whatever I'm doing, like I'm doing it with purpose. I'm doing it with intention. I'm not just showing up, punching a clock, daydreaming about something else. Like I am in whatever I'm in. And if I think we can all think about that a little bit. If we're spending a lot of time and we're not really there, we probably ought to be doing something else. Like that's probably not the right place for us if we don't get lost in it. The martial arts that you asked about, I get lost in that. That's where there's something called flow state, where you absolutely get lost, time and space disappears. And it's this, like, it's just, you wake up, it's almost like being in a dream. When I'm in martial arts, and I've been doing this for 20 years, when I'm there training, teaching, I just get lost in it. And over a period of time, when you're in something you get lost in, you develop your own version of it because something magic happens. It's like, I don't know, your DNA is rewiring. It's like neuroplasticity. Your brain is rewiring, everything's changing. And all of a sudden you're like, well, what is that? It's not what you started with. It's something that's new. You've evolved into something. That's what Yokido is. Yokido is me spending decades in Aikido and in studying Reiki and yoga, and they got mashed together through my spirit, which showed up as Yokido. And it's the idea that when you go into deep relationship, and you let the tension go, all of a sudden conflict it dissolves, and that's where magic happens. We need more of that in the world. So how do you do that? You go into relationships with an intention of letting go of tension, an intention of letting go of tension. And when that happens and it dissolves, relationships start to really bloom. And so that's what Yokido is. It's not about punching or kicking. It's about relationships without tension.
Wow, amazing.
Cool.
And how can we learn more about Yokido?
Well, it's a good question. It's my belief is that it'll end up being something that you can learn both physically and virtually probably in the next year, starting in where I live. And that's in Alabama. If you happen to be in Alabama, you can come do some classes at the new dojo, but it'll also be something that I'll offer virtually, because the idea of relationships deepening is good for all of us. It's good for the planet. It's good for spouses. It's good for kids. It's good for everything, good for business, and getting rid of the tension. Tension is it's a prime factor in war, in cancer, in everything. It's like we just have to figure out how to let go of these things. We are our own worst enemy, and a lot of that has to do with tension and conflict.
Very good.
That's amazing. One more question. Thank you, Damion, also just for taking the time. We're so honored just to be able to sit here and chat with you. What were some major breakthroughs, life-changing revelations that you had when you were doing martial arts and developing Yokido?
One of the things that you really start to understand is that everything matters, and being present is where everything starts. I don't see most people present. I see people chasing shiny objects. And I think of it like a bunch of drunk squirrels chasing shiny nuts.
It's such a good visual.
Yeah. Yeah. And you ever look at a squirrel and think it's present. It's just chasing and twitching. And it's like, wow. And that's what most humans are like. It's like, whoa, especially in America. Yeah. So the power is in the presence. It's being deeply present to whatever is. And you connect more, you hear more. There was a guy that I used to be friends with, and I remember making a comment to him. It's why I was really excited about our friendship when we first met. And we were sitting having lunch, and I just remember saying, man, you are such a great listener. It's because you're so present. It was amazing. I don't think most people understand even what that means, because we're thinking about the next thing. Our phones are interrupting us. They're dinging and twinging and snapping at us and all these things. Presence is so powerful. And we miss life without being present because we don't know how to be still. Mm-hmm. And there's a chapter, I think it's the last chapter in Reinvented Life, called Stillness. Stillness is something that most of us need to learn and practice. And we're really good at moving fast and chasing everything. What we're not good at is actually seeing our life and being in our life. It's like we're always thinking about tomorrow. And eventually there's just not going to be a tomorrow. So we have to really understand today. And today is about being present.
Yeah, I love that. We've been practicing a lot of that, or at least trying to bring more of that into our lives by doing meditation to help, bring our minds more into the now, so to speak.
It can be hard because, man, that shiny object syndrome is so strong. But
yeah, it's conditioning.
Yeah. So when you do start offering the Yokido virtual courses, please let us know.
Yeah, let the whole world know so that we can share it with a lot more folks. But before we start to wrap up the show and go into our rapid round here, I wanted to ask just a few things for the average listener who maybe has a 401k, right, at their work, and maybe they're intrigued. Maybe they're listening to this podcast with their wife, and maybe they're realizing that they have $500,000 sitting in a 401k somewhere with the previous employer, or maybe with their current employer. What advice do you have for them, or how does that asset that they have, or all of their savings, become available to them using your product? Maybe if you could just give us a little bit of a rundown.
Yeah, I mean, so what I'll tell everybody to do is to all this information you're getting. And usually I had a conversation for about an hour with a lady. I've never had this many questions in one call. And I thought she was done about a half an hour in. And then it was like 55 minutes. I'm thinking, wow, I'm about to go on a live recording. And I don't feel like she's even warmed up yet. More questions. But I wrote the EQRP book, and I wrote a report to sum up the book. And so what everybody should do is to start by downloading that report. You get it by texting EQRP to 72,000. Get a copy of the report. And I mean, that's how you start. So is it right for you, or who knows? I mean, I don't know if anybody but what you're going to do is you're going to get the information about it. and it'll help you understand, okay, this is what it is. And if you've got money from a previous employer, the chances are 99% that you're going to be able to control it. The EQRP is a great tool for that. Now, if you say, well, I love the stock market, do not download the report. It will not be of any use to you I mean, most people aren't like in love with the stock market, but the truth is that's what you need to do. You need to educate yourself. People sometimes come in and they're like, well, I haven't really done anything. Can you just tell me what to do? And I'm like, no, I cannot and will not do that.
Yeah, that's a lot of responsibility to take.
Yeah, and it doesn't empower you. It doesn't build the muscle.
Yeah,
like I'm not here to do that. I'm here to empower people, teach them how to fish, and then say, hey, look, here's a cool pole, but you still have to go fish. And that's I actually like working with people in general that have the philosophy of, okay, I know I can do this, and I could use some coaching, some help, some guidance. I'm all in on that, but doing it for you, I'm out.
Yeah, makes 100% sense. And I can't think of a better mentor than you, Damion, as well, because you've definitely had some experience starting companies and experiencing cycles and going through crashes and going through the ups and downs. So you've seen
That's why I'm so bald.
That's why you're wearing a hat today. For those,
it's cold, man. I mean, it's wintertime. It is cold. I wear a hat. It's like a survival thing. Like, it's not just because I like the look of the hat. It's because my head gives away all my heat.
You know, it's really funny, Damion. We're right now in Austin, Texas, and I thought that Austin had a reputation for being really warm, but we're sitting right here recording right now, and the sun is out, but it's like 40 degrees or 50 degrees, and we have a heater in the house, and this is just wild. I was not expecting this being in the South this late in the fall.
You might get snow apocalypse like they had last year.
Oh,
You
I
just
hope not.
snowboard down the street in Austin. Like, who knows?
All right. Well, Damion, it's been a blast. We loved having you on here. But what we're going to do now is we're going to head over to our rapid round. And in the rapid round, we're going to ask you 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. So question number 1, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why, outside of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad or the Bible? Because we get those all the time.
Those are like cheater answers.
I know, right?
It's like, come on, like everybody.
We literally have to call them out and say, don't say those.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I would say Mastery by George Leonard, who has passed away. Is an Aikidoka martial artist, and it was because it teaches you how to approach a plateau. That's one of the biggest takeaways. When most people go through something where day to day it's the same thing over and over, they quit instead of understanding that oftentimes that's a plateau, and eventually the universe is like, okay, you're committed enough, and something pops and you end up at a different energy level. And you can dig deep into that by looking at Ilya Prigogine's theory of dissipative structure, who is a professor at UT in Austin. And he talks about energy that goes into some substance or being. Eventually there'll be so much energy that it'll either break apart, die, or it breaks apart and reforms at a higher energy. And that's what happens with plateauing. So really can study that with the book Mastery.
Very good. Yeah, definitely going to take a look at that. Great recommendation. Number 2, if people wanted to emulate your success, what is the first actionable thing that they could do to follow in your footsteps?
That's easy. Shave your head. Like, bald is beautiful. Like, let's go. Come on. I mean, there's nothing prettier than a bald man. I mean, I'm just saying. I would agree with that, right? Oh, shoot. I mean, modeling is powerful. And so you want to maybe not do the model where you make tens of millions of dollars and then lose it all plus some. Like, that's probably not the thing. But modeling, you take the best parts and then avoid the dumb parts, because you'll find your own dumb parts to write a book on. And so I think it's really, the modeling part is about taking action fast and continuing to do it. That all comes from disconnecting from this need to be right and being afraid of mistakes. We are so afraid of mistakes because of judgment. More than anything, it's judgment. Like, somebody's going to look at me like I'm an idiot. Dude, just get over it. We're all idiots because we're all learning. And that's the beauty. It's called life.
That's absolutely right. And mistakes translate into success long-term. Failures always equal mistakes. And I do have to say too, we were talking about how handsome you are and bald. And then as soon as you said the word modeling, my brain kind of lit up there. I was like, is this a joke or not? All right, awesome. Number 3, what small thing do most people not know about you?
What small thing do most people do not know about me? Boy, what do people not know about me? I tend to be really vocal and open, and at the same time, I'm also very private. Like what do people not? Most of my books have been written over beers at a bar.
Oh, that's so cool.
So it's one of those things, and this is a strange thing. Sometimes I'm like, well, maybe I'm drinking too much wine, and I go, I have so much creativity. It's like Hemingway, and I think he was probably doing heroin too. I don't know. There's an extreme edge of this, but we have to. What most people don't realize is that there are ways for us to go into flow. And so one way I do it is I go to bars by myself, and I'll sit there and I'll have beer or wine, and that's an outlet for me to create. So a lot of the creation, a lot of the teaching tools and the writings and my ideation and visualization and visioning for the companies, that comes over like cabs. And so, I mean, if you want to know what the inspiration is, probably some Napa Red.
That's amazing.
Very cool. All right. Number 4. I have to say that is very unique. Number 4.
He's an alcoholic. Don't follow that. That's a bad plan. Don't do that one. Do something else. Go running. Go meditate.
To the success.
That's the secret to success. That's right, guys. Number 4. How do you like to unwind and restore your own creative juices?
And we just answered that. It's called red wine.
There we go.
I mean, it's honestly, there's something powerful in that. It's just it's what works for me, to be able to sit and go into the space of calm. And there's a million ways to do that. For me, it's just a really fast transition. And again, maybe AA would be like, that is not healthy. But you know what? A lot of people's lives are better because of what's happened in that space. And so to me, it seems like a pretty good rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Awesome. All right. And 5th and final question is, what is your favorite vacation spot?
I have a tie between Africa and Italy. And I've been all over the world, been to dozens and dozens of countries. And it used to be California until it was invaded by, I don't know, just socialism.
Yeah.
But in Africa, the reason I like Africa so much, I'm Italian, so I love Italy, and Italy is just very connected on relationship, and it's more about relationship than anything else. Africa is the most honest place I've ever been in terms of the energy, the people and the animals. It's real. And we are missing that. We're missing real. We're missing real truth. You in the wild, when you're sitting there with a lion cub and a lion, they're just sitting there. They don't care. They're just like, okay, I'm in my normal thing. And the people are honest. Like, you'd look at them and they're happy. You look around America and people are miserable. They have all this money and stuff and iPhones and Teslas and everything. And most people are just miserable. They're not laughing. They're not just happy. In Africa, and there are many places around the world like this, I love being in places where there's joy. You're like, how could you be so happy? You don't have anything. They have everything because they actually understand what matters.
Right. Man, such good answers. Thank you so much, Damion.
Yeah, Damion.
So good to have you on the show.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah. We definitely needed this today. This was a highlight of our day for sure while we're recording this. But before we let you go, I know that you have some important things to move on to, and we want to make sure that we honor your time commitment here as well. Before we go, why don't you tell the audience and the listeners how they can find out more about you or your products or anything else? It's kind of an open floor right now.
I thought you were going to say there's 5 more bonus questions we're going to have. This is going to be awesome. Like, super fast. You have 4 seconds for each answer.
No, sir.
I mean, honestly, the retirement stuff is a great place to start. If you want to know more about me, if you want to dive into the stuff that I'm thinking about and doing both in the exponential space with crypto technology and blockchain and financial freedom and all that kind of stuff, that's financialunderdogs.com. Listen to me every week. I've got commentary. So far, it's mostly been me talking about things that matter. They matter to me. They matter to other people. I mean, my life shifted after 2008, and it shifted from just internally and consuming to more contribution external. And so the things that I care about are how I can be a part of the world and make it better, not just change it, but change it for the better. And I do that by acknowledging what's effed up and what people can do about it. It's easy to go and just say the problem about everything. My friend Peter Schiff does this. The problem with this is this. I'm like, okay, I got it. We all know the problems. How are we going to solve it? So that I'm big on the solving, like asking better questions and figuring out what to do. And so that's, if you want more of that, but if you like to bitch about things and just talk about, like, don't come follow me. Like, I'm not the right guy, because I like to solve things. And so you can, Financial Underdogs is the place for that.
Excellent. Very cool. And where can people find that online? Just Google it, Financial Underdogs podcast.
Yeah. I mean, financialunderdog's.com. It's on all the stuff, the podcast. If you want to know about EQRP and the retirement stuff, you want to get access to all that money that's sitting there, just text EQRP to 72,000 and it'll give you a copy of the report and the book and access to us if you want to talk to us.
Very cool. We'll go ahead and put those in the show notes as well. And very cool that that you know Peter Schiff, because I saw one of his YouTube videos about the what was it? It was Occupy Wall Street. And then he came down there. He went down there and he said, "I am the 1%. Let's talk." And awesome YouTube video. Really, really cool video. I recommend that for everyone.
I remember when he did that right after the campaign. I worked with him on his campaign in Connecticut, and part of my job was to make sure he didn't get killed by anybody. So So I did a lot of driving with him and drove him around, and was they call it the body man, like the person that's right with him. And there's a lot of threats for somebody that's that controversial and wants to change a system. So part of the job was to see if there's, and block any potential threat. What's funny is that you have threats from people that don't like his politics, and then you have his admirers, and his admirers ended up being really mad at him because he would tell everybody they were wrong. I was like, Peter, that person was going to vote for you, but you just told him to F off. Like, don't do that. He's a great guy, but he's the worst candidate I've ever seen in my life.
He's too honest.
He can't lie.
Yeah,
he cannot lie. Exactly the guy is like, I mean, it's amazing. So that's interesting experience. And cool. Nobody got killed. That was also good.
Well, anyway, Damion, thank you so much for exploring all this with us. What products you have to offer, talking about mindset, all these wonderful stories about Peter Schiff and everything else we talked about. It's incredible stuff. So all of you guys, I hope that you guys enjoyed the podcast. And if you guys want to listen to more, please like, subscribe, and comment wherever you're listening or watching this, because we want to hear more from you and provide more extremely valuable content. We want to make sure we're heading down the right direction, that we're adding the right value. And we just want to make sure that we're scratching that itch that you have to help build wealth and build couples-based financial independence. So that being said, that's all that we have for the show. Damion, thanks again for being on this. This was a pleasure. It was our pleasure to have you on.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
We are signing off for the day. Have a great day, everyone.